I'm Gemma Atkinson.
And I'm Claire Sanderson, the Editor-in-Chief of Women's Health.
Claire's recently recorded an episode of our podcast just as well. Tell us about the guest. I missed it.
So, Gem, I promise you, this is one of my favourite, if not my favourite episode we've done so far. Unexpectedly so. So I interviewed a woman called Tracy Hall. Tracy Hall is a successful, beautiful, intelligent, educated woman, a very senior marketing exec at companies like eBay in Australia, and she fell victim to a romance con man. Now,
oh God,
this is not someone who met someone online, had never met them and shared their life savings. She went online dating because she'd been through a divorce, so she'd never done it before, met a handsome man who pertained to be doing very well for himself working in the finance sector, and he conned her out of her life savings.
What, like thousands?
Hundreds of thousands.
Oh no.
And this woman is not a gullible woman, and her tale is a tale of caution. And I don't want to say too much more because I urge people to listen to the episode. But Tracy now campaigns to empower women to have better control of their finances, empower us to have more knowledge of where our finances are at. And her whole mantra is, you don't have to have hundreds of thousands of pounds. Most of us don't, but we do have finances. If you're employed, you have finances.
Yeah, of course.
But so many of us leave that to our partners. I'm one of them. I shared in the podcast that my husband entirely manages the finances in our marriage. You know, there are other things that I manage. I manage the children's school uniform and the food shopping and all that side of things, but my husband managing the finances, so I wouldn't have a clue where everything is if something was to happen to him. And that is her point. We make ourselves vulnerable and we shouldn't. We need to have a better grip of our finances, our money, to protect us now and in the future if anything was to happen to us. Not necessarily a con man. It could literally be something like it could be a divorce. It could be serious illness. It could be an accident, or it could be, you know, God forbid, your partner dying. But she wants women to have a better understanding of what is going on, what goes in and out of their bank account. But her story is one of caution. She's written a book called The Last Victim. It was a absolutely fascinating episode.
Bro, I look forward to listening to it. And please do like and subscribe to this episode because, like Claire said, this guest is fascinating, and with the more subscribers we have, the more amazing guests we can get. So thank you very much and enjoy the ep.
Today's guest is Tracy Hall, a financial wellness advocate, author and senior marketing leader who has worked with companies like eBay, Virgin and GoDaddy. But today we're talking about a different kind of expertise, the hard-won wisdom that comes from surviving romance, fraud and financial abuse. Tracy's book, The Last Victim, chronicles her 16-month relationship with someone she trusted with her life savings and her journey to rebuild not just her bank account but her sense of self. This is a conversation about red flags, resilience and why talking about money is one of the most powerful forms of self-care. Tracy, thank you for joining me on Just As Well today.
Thanks for having me, Claire.
So you are all the way from Australia as well,
yes,
I should say.
I travelled here last week, yep.
You are in London having various exciting meetings, some maybe relating to the book that we have here. Yep. Your story is a shocking but fascinating tale of survival, if I'm honest, and how you've come out the other side. Just take us through it from the start.
Well, it was early 2016 and I'd been separated from my husband for over a year, and I was working a really big job at eBay in Sydney and had a lot of responsibility, a lot on my plate. I was getting my head around single parenting my 5-year-old, and I decided in all my wisdom that I'd like to start online dating. And of course, I'd never done that before. So took a swan dive into the Sydney dating pool, and I met a man by the name of Max Tavita. And he was a chief investment officer for a family office, so a very high-level finance executive. And he lived in Bondi. He loved surfing. He loved running. And we met and started a relationship that lasted nearly 18 months. We took family holidays together, spent lots and lots of time together. And it wasn't until mid-July 2017, so nearly 18 months later, that I woke up to a Crime Stoppers video of him being arrested outside of his Bondi Beach apartment, and his face was all blurred out. But of course I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was my boyfriend, Max Tavita. Except it wasn't Max Tavita, it was a man by the name of Hamish McLaren, and he happens to be one of Australia's most notorious con men. And he'd been arrested for swindling 15 victims out of $7.6 million. He stole my life savings in the process.
And your visceral reaction to seeing that video, it was physical, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, my stomach dropped. I couldn't feel my legs, that feeling when everything goes numb. And I was just watching this video and I'm thinking, they've got it wrong.
Yeah.
It's a mistake because, it's the headlines that were with the video were things like Bondi businessman 47 superannuation fraud, which is our pension equivalent in Australia. And I was thinking they've got it wrong because Max is only 42, because he lied about his age, and everything that I was seeing just seemed so surreal and wrong. And it was in that moment that then there was a series of events afterwards that led me to the truth.
So let's take you back to the start of your relationship then. You went online, as is common. You hadn't done it before because you'd previously been married, and maybe when you met your husband, online dating wasn't a thing. So it takes guts, I think, to go online. I've never done it, so it would.
I don't recommend.
Well,
1 star.
You're not an advocate for it, to be honest. Not a 5-star review. But his profile popped up, and he was this sporty blonde, what I think a typical Aussie guy, outdoorsy, handsome, tanned.
Yep, fit, active. He looked normal, and it was kind of slim pickings back in the day. Yeah. And there were a lot of men that were sort of posing with dead animals in foreign countries, and that was their profile pics. And for me, seeing him just being really active and outdoorsy, I guess he just looked normal. And we connected, and it took us a while to sort of start a conversation. And when we did, I just was, I guess, attracted to the banter. He could spell properly. I know the bar is pretty low when you use that as an indication. But he just had a really great sense of humor. He was super Aussie, but he had this kind of corporate side to him. And then we just sort of started this relationship and this kind of back and forward online, and then we eventually met.
And in the early days, or certainly for the best part of your relationship, there was no talk of your money or how much you earned. Yes, he claimed to have a successful financier job. And did he boast about the trappings of that job? Did he, flash the cash?
No, not really. There were indications of wealth. So, for example, over the period that we were together, there were 5 cars. But the interesting thing about him was that he would listen and mirror back to me what he heard. So if I was a person that was impressed by that, then it would have continued to appear. But I actually used to give him shit and go, what single bachelor in Bondi needs 4 cars? You're a jerk. Just laughing with him. And then, a few weeks later, one of the cars would just disappear, and he'd say things to me like, you know what, you're right, Trace. I want to simplify my life, and I don't need that. You're right. I've been thinking about what you said. And then suddenly the cars all just disappeared. And so I don't even know who owned those cars. I don't know where they disappeared to, but they were certainly very real and very much there. I think if I had been a person who was impressed and wanted designer outfits and fancy dinners, then that would have materialized. Yeah. But my lifestyle and what I value is really low key, and we spend a lot of time on the beach having picnics and surfing, and just he really listened to who I was as a person, what my values were, what my desires were. And essentially he mirrored those back to me. Now, I didn't know this at the time. I thought that's who he was. But in retrospect, that's what I understand it to be now.
So you love sports, you love exercise and outdoors.
Yeah.
Was his love of outdoors and triathlons and running authentic, or was that something he developed to mirror you, do you think?
No, I would say that was authentic. He was very active, very fit, loved surfing, very, very good surfer, really encouraged me to do more surfing. We went running a lot together. He ate very well. He didn't really drink. His lifestyle was very clean and wholesome, I suppose. He was very early to bed, very early to rise. He didn't have many kind of vices in the sense of sugar or even things like that. He was a pretty structured human, very predictable in his routine. But no, that wasn't fabricated. It was very authentic. So I guess in that sense, we really, we both lived by the beach, so we loved, the ocean and things like that.
So how far into the relationship did the talk of your personal wealth and how he could help you, quote unquote, manage your personal wealth start?
I'd say it was subtle conversations over time. There was a lot of talk about money because that was his line of work. So it was a lot of discussion about the investments he was making for his family office clients, what was happening in the political environment and how that was impacting the economy, the markets, because he was constantly tinkering away on his Bloomberg machines. So money was a constant conversation that we would have, which was kind of refreshing because we don't really talk a lot about money generally, but it was always in the context of his expertise in his job. And it was towards the end of that year, 2016, so 6, 7, 8 months into the relationship, he had indicated that he had knowledge of something that was happening globally that would mean there'd be some shifts in the markets that he was going to take advantage of for his family office clients, and that he had discussed this with his sister and brother-in-law. And then he came to me and said, my sister suggested that I have this conversation with you because, I know how hard you're trying and I want you to be financially independent and in a really strong position and, all of this kind of conversation. So he started talking to me about that and then just said, look, I'm doing it for my sister and her husband. I'm doing it for the family office clients. And I said to him, but surely that's insider trading. Like I'd worked in finance. I sort of knew these things and I knew enough. And it was almost like he had predicted that I would say that. He goes, no, I've been to my lawyer. I've had a discussion with them. And it wasn't just a fob off. It was a very detailed mansplain of why he was able to take advantage of that situation. And so it all seemed very legitimate. It all seemed very professional. And he encouraged me to invest money, but it was kind of like just whatever you can afford. Like, it's just an opportunity, Trace. I'd love you to take advantage of it. So that's where it started. And that's after that situation, he came back to me and he said, the investment did really well. You doubled your money. And so did my sister. And, what would you like me to do with it? Do you want me to give it back to you? And I said, oh, well, let's just sit tight for a minute. And, and then I had to think about what I wanted to do with that. So that was where it started. But then it kind of went away for months. Like nothing else was discussed, except there were subtle signs when I look back of grooming and coercion where he would ask me questions like, how much are you paying in fees on your superannuation, your pension fund? Now, I don't know about you, but I've never had a boyfriend or a partner ask me about how many fees I'm paying on a financial investment. No. So looking back, it's odd. But at the time, because it was so much part of our conversation all the time, it didn't seem weird.
And it's what he did for a living, allegedly. We now know it was a fake job. Yeah. But as far as you were concerned, he was a chief investment officer. Yeah. So
and this was something he'd know about. And he had strong opinions about financial funds and how much money you pay in fees and why why they were, he used to say things like they're thieves, Trace. They just take all your earnings in fees. And, you know, there were just conversations like this that just put little doubts into my mind, or little kind of breadcrumbs, that by the time, you know, over a year later, when he was, you know, doing the self-managed superannuation fund, all of those things made sense.
So for people listening, because I don't know what a self-managed superannuation fund is. So this is a pension fund.
Yes,
it's self-managed because you set it up. It's not a pension fund that you would pay into as part of being employed by a company.
Yes. So in Australia, ordinarily most people would pay into a managed fund that your employer, you know, you choose which fund, and it's managed by that organisation. And that's what I had done for 22 years. So it was 22 years of every hour that I had worked that had gone into this fund. And then what you can do is, if you have everything in place in the way that the regulation requires you to, you can take the money out of a fund and manage it yourself with a proper constitution and an investment strategy, and there are certain documents you need. So what he did was essentially groomed and coerced me to set up this self-managed pension fund, and he provided all of the documents in conjunction with a lawyer that I signed. He took me all through them. He basically, it was all set up legitimately. But what happened was, when that money was transferred out of the managed fund into the self fund, it was going into a trading account with a trading platform. And he had provided all the documentation showing me that that trading account was in my name, all of the reports, everything. But what actually happened was he had washed that money through an account of his. So all the documentation was falsified. Every form I filled in was for nothing. Every report he gave me on the returns were all on fake letterhead and fake document. It was just such an elaborate con that just went for such a long time.
Because this is a man whom would leave your home on a morning dressed in a suit, pertaining to go into an office in central Sydney, and you would drive together, and you would get out of his car and go off to eBay, and he would drive home back to Bondi and put his board shorts on. So he made up a fictitious job. He even told you stories of colleagues and his boss.
Sent me photos of what they ate at lunch from the office, you know, kitchen. I don't even know where these photos came from. Probably just the internet somewhere. I don't know, but yeah.
But the level of detail he went into and was able to maintain that level of deceit. So every aspect of his life with you was a con, was fake, in order to get his hands on your money. Did you meet the sister or the brother-in-law or any of his friends or anyone from his real life?
Yeah, I met his brother-in-law a few times. I met a friend of his that he grew up with. I met his so-called CEO, his boss, who happened not to be CEO. He was very hesitant for me to meet his sister. And it was always sort of a future promise, like, yes, we'll do that in 2 weekends' time. And we'd plan it, and then invariably something would come up, or I couldn't go, or whatever happened. So I never met his sister-in-law. That became quite a friction point for us right towards the end, because I couldn't understand why he was so hesitant for me to meet her. But his brother-in-law I met, his mate he grew up with, and he must have just been absolutely crapping himself that his name, I would say Max and they would say Hamish, you know. So, but invariably we don't really say our names. I don't even think I've said Claire today. Like, you know, like it's just not something you do.
But the woman who he said was his CEO, how did she introduce herself then? Because if I was having a conversation with someone who was introduced to me as the CEO, I would talk to them about their job. So how did that conversation evolve without anyone realising it was based on falsehoods?
It was both times I met her, it was very brief. Once was in person, just in the street. They were leaving a restaurant and I was meeting him out of an Uber. And so it was very quick. Oh, hi, you know, how are you? And that was that. And then the other time was via a FaceTime call. They were at dinner together and they FaceTimed. And of course, I knew who she was, so she didn't need to introduce herself because he talked about her all the time. And so he was like, oh, I'm just here at dinner with Anna and, you know, ha, 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 what are you doing? What are you eating? What's going on for you? And I was like, oh, hi, Anna, you know, how are you? And so it was sort of these brief encounters. Like we didn't spend.
And who was she? Did you ever get to the bottom of who she was?
She was an energy healer.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
I know, right? Like, I don't know where he met her, but they were sort of, I think there was some way she was involved, but I don't know if she knew she was involved. When I spoke to the police about it, we don't know which side of the fence she sat on because I think she lost money to him as well. But also too, the police weren't entirely sure that she wasn't completely innocent. But unfortunately, she has since passed away, as has his sister. So I guess they're questions that I'll never have answered.
I mean, if she was an energy healer, she's not a very good one if she can't sense bad energy coming out of every pore.
I think somehow there was involvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he eventually got his hands on 317,000 Aussie dollars. How much does that amount to in British pounds, do you know?
I think it's about 180,000 pounds.
And when did you, as you said, you saw the Crime Stoppers video, anyone's immediate response would be, that is a mistake. Don't be ridiculous. That's my boyfriend of the last year. This is some terrible injustice. When did it dawn on you, my life savings have gone, and yes, the man whom I thought I loved and have shared my bed with and shared my life with is doesn't exist?
I think there were two moments in time. It was when his brother-in-law texted me, and because I had reached out to him and said Max is missing, like I was worried. And when he came back to me, he sent me a message that said, Tracy, please call me urgently, Chris. And then in brackets, he wrote Hamish's brother-in-law. And that's the first time I saw that it wasn't Max. And at the same time, I'm seeing the Crime Stoppers footage and I'm trying to piece the puzzles together. I was so discombobulated. And I was like, I called him and I said, Chris, who the fuck is Hamish? I have no idea who Hamish is. And then the detectives called me, because I had actually asked Bondi Police to go and do a wellness check on him because I hadn't heard from him in 24 hours. I thought there'd been a shark attack. I thought there'd been a surfing accident. I thought something had happened. And when I called Bondi Police back and said, nothing's happened, he's been arrested, they said, yes, we know, but you need to call the detectives because the name of the person that lives there, the age of that person, everything you told us about that person that we were doing a wellness check on is not the person who lives in that address. And I was like, yeah, it is. Anyway, then I had to talk to the detectives who arrested him, and that's when they told me. And then I spent the next few hours at the police station, and it was in the weeks after that I realised that everything was gone.
Can I take you back to his brother-in-law? When you rang him and said, who is Hamish? How did he respond?
He said, what do you mean? Hamish Watson, Hamish McLaren, because he had two different surnames. And I said, who is Max? Who is Max Tavita? And he said, I don't know. And then everything went silent after that. He got off the phone pretty quickly.
So he knew that he'd been duped as well?
No, I think he knew that Hamish was up to his old tricks, but he didn't want to have a conversation with me about it.
So you spoke to the detectives and you found out that you were one of many and that your money was missing, if not gone forever. You've never recovered any of your money, and nor have any of his victims. And there's some estimations that it could be to the tune of $60 million. So he's ruined many, many lives. Globally. We can talk about the couple of the other victims. There is a documentary on Channel 4, the $60 million con man, which I've watched, and some of his victim stories is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
He took advantage of people when they were at their most vulnerable and ruined their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and people who were a lot older than me. So retirees, they're the ones that broke my heart the most, because at least for me, I was in my 40s. You know, I was 42. I knew that I had another 20, 25 years of work left in me. I could rebuild that money, really. And these were retirees that were looking down the barrel of a really comfortable retirement. They had worked so hard their whole life, and they went from that to not knowing how they were going to buy their groceries every week. And that to me was just heartbreaking, because where do you go from there when you're in your 70s? You can't work. You're relying on the government. You've worked your whole life. And he didn't care. He didn't care.
Well, he has zero empathy.
Yeah.
At all. To be able to, a sociopath, yes, to be able to do that to yourself and all those other people and not give a damn.
No. It was all for his own financial gain, and this is what criminals like him do. They ingratiate themselves into your life, into your relationships, into your friendship circle, into your work circles, whatever way they need to do to get under your skin, into your head and into your heart for their own financial gain. They will do it. They don't care how they get there.
Because there clearly weren't any red flags, because you're an educated, smart, engaged woman. And if there had been any true red flags, I don't think we'd be sat here now, would we? But I've heard you describe it as beige flag. So in hindsight, yes, him inquiring about how many fees you're paying on your superannuation. But what other beige flags? Maybe his hesitance to introduce you to his family, looking back. If you've been with someone for a year, a natural evolvement there is to meet the sister. So he clearly didn't want you in his inner sanctum. But what other beige flags did you see in hindsight?
In hindsight, there were things like he didn't have a digital footprint. So, there was nothing written about Max Tavita on the internet, of course, because Max Tavita doesn't exist. But in this day and age, if there is nothing about you on the internet, I would say that is a beige flag or a red flag. Now, of course, I Googled the things he told me. I looked up his name, I looked up his history. And when I couldn't find things, even if I kind of approached him with that, which I did at times, he always had a reason. He always had a very long-winded explanation of why that all made perfect sense based on everything he had told me before. So my confirmation bias kicked in, because I was like, oh, that's right, he told me that 2 weeks ago, or a month ago he told me that, and everything made sense. So of course it didn't sort of feel weird to me. But looking back, if you meet someone and they have no digital footprint, I think that's very, very odd. The fact that he, I guess there was an isolation element, which is true in all types of kind of coercive control, where he, we didn't spend a lot of time together because I was a single parent. I have my daughter most of the time, and that suited him. But to me, it felt like he just understood. There was no pressure. So it might go like 10 days or 2 weeks without seeing each other physically. And then we'd have a chance to spend the weekend together or a night. And I'd say, oh, let's go out with some friends, or I would love you to meet my workmates or whatever. And he'd say things to me like, Trace, but I haven't seen you for 10 days or 2 weeks. I've really missed you. I think it'd be just really great if we could spend some time together. Now, I mean, music to my ear. There's something really beautiful about it. Yeah. And I understood that, and it all made sense. And so when I heard that, I thought, no, you're right. And we were building a relationship. It wasn't like we'd been together for 10 years. So we were trying to get to know each other, and that was our very limited time that we had. But he just preyed on that. But what happened then was there was this isolation element where my friends didn't spend any time with us, so they couldn't verify the relationship. My family lived in Queensland, which is quite a long way from Sydney. His family weren't around. He didn't have friends. So it really was just the two of us, which in a lot of ways was this lovely cocoon that we were in. And if his intentions weren't so evil, it would have been really beautiful for those first few months.
Because the more people he's exposed to and you're in a circle, the more chance there is somebody will start asking questions. Because I know there have been situations where his cons have been found out. There was one one that he carried out in the UK, but I think it was the brother of the victim
Yes.
was suspicious
Yep.
of him, and he was quite well connected, so got someone at Goldman Sachs to check their records because he was claiming to work at Goldman Sachs. And but that is the risk of being exposed to a wider circle, that somebody knows someone and questions will be asked.
Yeah.
So the fact that he kept you locked down, in essence, is not at all romantic. It's all part of his grand controlling plan.
Yeah. And the other thing, you know, as much as we talked about money is still, in my opinion, quite a taboo subject, you know, and we don't talk about how much money we earn. We don't talk about where we're investing it. We don't certainly talk about money we've lost. And so this is what somebody like him, or somebody who is conducting financial abuse or coercive control in this sense, is that they prey on the fact that you won't talk about what you're doing with your money with other people. And that's where that victim in the UK was. I mean, it was a positive outcome because obviously they had discussed the investments together, the brothers. And, you know, but for me and for most people, we don't talk about money. And so it remains in this like code of silence that is protected through the financial coercive control. And that's how it sort of just festers.
What I think is fascinating about your story, Tracy, is that you are this beautiful, clever, educated, successful woman, and it happened to you. Now, we read stories all the time about lonely women whom have given away their savings to someone they met online who they've never met in real life, who professes undying love for them and somehow persuades them to transfer all their funds to them. That, to me, feels that they were gullible to fall for that in the first place. But what happened to you could happen to anyone. You met a man online who was good looking, gave you no reason really at the time, contemporaneously, to question his status, his income, his name, his age. Why would you question those things? You take people on face value. Our natural instinct is to trust people. When you know, I don't think our natural instinct generally is to be suspicious, although it will be after this interview.
It is now. It's true. We are biologically wired to trust.
Yeah.
Because of our primal history. If we didn't trust back in the day, we didn't survive. We needed the group. We needed that belonging. We needed to trust to survive. And those instincts have continued. And I've thought a lot about trust because the price of trust that I paid was so huge. And I really wanted to understand, why did I trust him so easily? And when you think about it, you go through life. Okay, you go to the doctor and you don't question whether they have a medical degree. You don't ask to see their qualification. You hop on an aeroplane. You don't swing left into the cockpit and breathalyze the pilots. You trust they haven't been drinking. You trust that people driving on the road know the rules in the same way that you do. There are all these invisible contracts of trust because the world wouldn't operate if we didn't trust. We have to trust. But it is the weaponization of trust, especially in this digital environment that we're in, that means that those kind of primal instincts that we have to trust, what some would call blindly, they're taken advantage of and they're weaponized. And I never thought this would happen to me.
No.
Never. I never imagined that somebody like me, it just never, those stories never related to me. And that's why I felt so passionately about writing the book and showing how layered and insidious this crime is for many people that it occurs to. And, you know, that is why that I wrote the book, because I never thought it would be. And most of us never think it's going to happen to us until it does.
So you now spend a lot of your time empowering women to take control of their finances, because you don't have to have $317,000 or £150,000, which most of us don't, to be taken advantage of. You can, as women, generally, we're is it too much of a generalization to say we're not confident around our finances? Okay, I'll talk about my own situation. I'm married. I've been married to my husband for 15 years. We both work full-time in very senior jobs in the media. So as a result, our incomes are more than adequate. I have no idea where my pension is. I have no idea what's in our savings. I know I've got an ISA, but I've got no idea. And I feel like an idiot admitting all this, but you've shared, so I'll share. I do not even know what day of the month I get paid or how much goes into my bank account, because we carved out roles when we got married that he would sort out all the finances.
Yeah.
And by the way, it served us well. I don't think we'd be where we are in home ownership and stuff if he wasn't organised, But I'm the practical one in terms of the kids. Like if it wasn't for me, the kids would not have school uniform, new shoes and be fed. We've carved out fairly traditional roles, I suppose, considering we both have very senior jobs in the media, but I have no idea about my finances. No, and it's because I was terrible with money when he met me, and the agreement was I'll take control of the finances if we're going to get married. And I was like, thank God someone take control. But I've left myself so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I don't think my situation is uncommon.
I was just going to say, I hear stories like this all the time.
Yeah.
And when you're in a partnership, it is normal to divide task and, based on your skills or, your strengths. I think what I say to women is, you can outsource the execution, but don't outsource the education, because you don't have to lose your life savings to a con man to be financially vulnerable. If your partner dies, if you go through an unexpected divorce, a major illness, a natural disaster, how do you cope in that situation if you're not on top of your money? And I'm not embarrassed to admit that even though I was sort of, single at the time when I met Hamish, I knew there were all these things I had to do for future financial me. But they always fell to the bottom of my to-do list because I was so stretched. I was working 15-hour days. I was single parenting a 5-year-old. I was trying to be a good friend, a good daughter, there were all the things. And I thought, you know what, I'll take care of that another day. I never prioritized it, and I never took the agency I needed to take to ensure that I was secure. And had I have done that, I can almost guarantee that this wouldn't have happened to me. There would have been some other levels of coercion and control, and, I was in love with him. I had my rose-coloured glasses on, so I didn't see any flags. I just, So I always want to stress that it doesn't have to be an extreme situation like this. It can just be through life, and this situation happened to my mum. So my dad died very suddenly when my mum and dad were 53. So not that much older than I am now. And my mum, all very traditional roles, dad took care of the big stuff. Mum did the monthly budgets and looked after us kids. And when he died, it was really hard for her to get her head around how she was going to unlock $10,000 for the funeral. And she's doing that while she's grieving. Now, that's vulnerability. She didn't know all of those, bits of information because they had divided and conquered. And so I think it's important for women especially to just at least lean in, at least take some agency, because we don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what's going to happen. And in most cases, it will work out well. But if it doesn't, you have to be prepared, and you don't want to be in that situation where you're like, holy shit, what do I do? Or where is everything at? Or how am I going to pay for the groceries this week? So, yeah.
And what are the first, say, top 3 tips that women should do to lean in? Very simple steps. Because if you're someone like me who is completely financially illiterate almost, I've got no idea where to start. What's the first 3 things I should do when I go home tonight?
Have a conversation with your partner and say, I want to understand. Having that curious thought in the first place to say, okay, and I mean, this might seem a bit morbid, but, thinking about it in your head and going, if something happened to my husband, would I know where everything's at? Do I have the logins?
No.
Do I know the passwords?
Yeah.
And so I was doing this talk one day, and this is a great example of what you could do. And it was this woman, and she was sitting in the front row, and she put her hand up and she said, I want to tell you a story. And I said, okay. And she said, my husband and I have a document in the top drawer of our office, and it's titled In the Unfortunate Event of. And it is a document that has everything they need should one of them pass away, or be in an accident, or be incapacitated, or lose their mind, or whatever it might be. And in that document is every login. It's where everything's at. So, and then they go back to it every 6 months, and they just update it if they need to. But it's the document that they go to, and she doesn't know everything. It wasn't like she knew all the information herself. It was where she went if something happened. So maybe that's a good tip, just being curious and saying, hey, can I come along to the meeting with the accountant or the financial advisor next time? I really want to understand this a bit more. I don't want to do it because we can't do everything. We've got enough on our plates. But just leaning in, taking agency around your knowledge, your understanding. Follow some great influencers on social media. You can learn so much in really snappy bite-sized pieces. And I think it's just having that curiosity and that feeling that you're on top of it should something go wrong.
How did you move forward from what happened to you? Because I hold on to grudges. And if this had happened to me, I would struggle not to carry that bitterness with me forever. You must have really dug deep to move forward with joy in your life and not negativity, and really holding on to a hatred, because I've never met the man and I hate him. So I can only imagine the level of hate you must have felt for some time afterwards.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster of emotions over a number of years. There's been a lot of therapy. There has been a lot of soul searching. There's been a lot of crying. There's been depression. There's been anxiety. There's been every emotion you could possibly imagine. I think over the top of that, I am a single mum, and I was 42 and I had nothing. So I desperately had to keep working, and I couldn't lose my job. So that kept me going. Okay, I've got to turn up. I've got to have this job. I've got to perform. And that was a really great motivation for me. And then I had my daughter, and I looked at her very early on, and I was an absolute mess. But I made a decision that there'd be no tears at the dinner table. She was 6. How do you explain this to a 6-year-old? And I looked at her and I thought, who's going to get her to school? Who is going to make her lunch every day? Who is going to get her to her activities if I'm crying in my bed in the fetal position all the time? So I made a decision that in front of her, I would just carry on. And whilst I think that looked like strength and resilience to a lot of people, it was pretty much just survival. But in retrospect, sometimes you need things outside of yourself to get you through. And so that's what I did. And of course, children, they are the center of their own universe, and they can pull you out of, your emotions pretty quickly. But late at night and early in the mornings were really difficult times for me. But at the end of the day, I had to decide what kind of life I wanted. And I didn't want him to win. There's something inside me that is a little bit stubborn. And I thought, you know what, if I remain angry and bitter and, annoyed at the system and all of those things, then he wins.
He won, yeah.
And in my heart, I felt like he didn't deserve to win. He's a criminal. He's in jail. He's where he needs to be. I get to live this great life. I get to see the ocean every day. And now I get to help companies and people understand this world in a way that no one else can. So, but that has taken 8.5 years, Claire. It doesn't happen overnight. There was a lot of rocky moments, a lot of dark places.
Because he got quite a lengthy jail sentence for financial fraud, because it's quite hard to prove.
Yes.
And so is it 16 years, but it was reduced to 12. So
That's
he's due out, or he can come out next year. He can apply for parole next year.
Parole will be next year.
And I would bet my mortgage that he goes off and does this to someone else, which is terrifying for for society.
Yeah. Well, don't let anyone access to your mortgage, but
No.
especially not him. But yes, I've spoken to forensic psychologists and people that have, looked at humans like him, and they all say that it's pathological.
It's pathological.
And he will do it again. He's never had another job. This is all he's ever done. And I would like to hope there's been some level of rehabilitation, but I in my heart, I don't believe it to be true. And which is, again, why I'm so passionate about sharing not only this story, but more broadly around scams and fraud, because these people live amongst us. We are all being targeted every day, and we all need to be, vigilant of our money, our situations, our digital identities. So that's where I'm going with it, and he will do what he will do. I can't control that.
So how have you managed to trust again? Have you formed another relationship? And if so, you must have your guard up to some extent about generally, but you can't. Can you trust everyone you meet? You can't, and that must be ever more present for you than anyone.
You're right. I definitely look at the world differently now. I'd never come across such evil and such deceit and betrayal. That wasn't part of my world, so I was shocked. But I think it's fair to say the aftermath of this was strangely not that I couldn't trust other people anymore. It was that I couldn't trust myself, because I had made the biggest mistake of my life, letting him in, handing over my financial power. I lost all confidence in myself, or trust in myself, or trust and faith in humanity in the world. But mostly it was about rebuilding my own sense of self, my own intuition, my own thoughts around how I looked at the world and what I let in and what I didn't. So that's been the biggest journey for me, rather than trusting other people. But I definitely look at the world differently now. I look at people differently. But I do try always to remember that Hamish is an outlier.
Yeah.
Most people are good people. Most people want the best for each other. He's operating at the top 1% of psychopathic offenders. Yeah. I was just unlucky to meet him, and I remind myself of that every day, because I don't want to be side-eyeing everything and everyone. That's not how I want to live my life. It's not a way to live. But I am more skeptical of the world. I wouldn't say I'm more cynical. I'm just more skeptical of things. I look at things more critically than I ever have. And I think critical thinking is something we should all, because, unfortunately our emotions take over and we don't look at things as critically as we could. So they're the things that I've taken out, but I try and turn them into a positive rather than a cynical negative.
If anyone listening wants to find out more information about the work you do, they can also buy your book, The Last Victim, which is available now. But do you have a website, social media presence?
Yes, so my website is tracyhall.com.au, and my Instagram handle is Tracy Lee Hall. And the book is Amazon's probably the easiest place to buy in the UK.
I can't wait to give it a read. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for coming in today. It's been fascinating, and I'm so glad I got to meet you. I really am. I've been enthralled this whole conversation, and I'm thank you for your bravery about speaking loudly about this, because maybe some would feel embarrassed. Is it unfair to say that some women would be ashamed?
Yeah, of course. I felt those things for sure. But that's what we have to. We have to shine the light back on the criminals and not on ourselves.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming in to see us today. Before we go, we have some quick fire questions. We ask all our guests these, just a bit of fun. So I'm going to come to your place in Sydney for dinner in the sunshine, because it's raining in London today. Yeah. So I'm going to come down under and come to your house for dinner. What are you going to cook me?
Make your own rice paper rolls. So we have a big platter of fresh herbs and meat and salad, and then we roll our own rice paper rolls with dipping sauce.
Nice.
It's great. It's very messy. It's fun.
Feels very healthy, which I assume that everything in Australia must be healthy.
Most things.
You go into a desert island for a year on your own, and you can only take one thing. What are you going to take?
Wow. I'll take my daughter.
Oh,
She's so much fun. She would keep me entertained all year round.
that's a lovely question. I've said to another guest on yet, am I a bad mother for saying my kids are the last people I take? If I'm going for a year on a desert island, I am not taking out either of my children.
Sometimes on Mother's Day, I think the best day would be just to have the day to yourself, not to be surrounded by kids.
Just off you go, off to granny's.
Just put me in a massage salon and I'll be happy.
Coffee or wine?
Coffee.
I love coffee too. And then what's one thing someone listening today can do to make themselves feel that little bit better?
Sleep.
Yes.
Sleep is the biggest life hack on earth, and we just don't lean into it enough.
Don't prioritise it, do
No.
you?
I was an insomniac for 20 years, and I hacked my sleep during COVID with an Aura ring.
Oh, yes.
And now sleep is my biggest, secret weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good for everything, sleeping.
Sleep makes everything better. Life is easier when you've slept.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming into Women's Health HQ today. I've thoroughly enjoyed meeting you. Tracy's book is available to buy now on Amazon, and I would recommend people watch the documentary on Channel 4 as well, because I thought that was a brilliant watch, and you get the full scale of Hamish/Max offending. It's shocking, and they even say that there's many other victims worldwide who weren't featured on the documentary who may have not even yet come forward.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, well, thank you, Tracy.
Thank you for having me, Claire. Appreciate it.